Well, good afternoon. This is Crafty Sue. I've got the camera angle so you can actually see what I'm doing. You don't need to see my face. I have used acrylic paints like you use acrylic paints normally. I've also used them as if they were oil paints. The problem with trying to do that method is that the acrylic is a water-based paint and it will dry quicker than the oil paint does. That's why oil paints, they're kind of forgiving and you can work them around and this and that. But today I'm going to show you how to use acrylics and hopefully get the same result with some vibrant colors. I did this and it needs some more work done to it, but this is done in watercolor and you can see it's very soft. As far as that, it's nothing real distinct, but that's part of being an impressionist artist. It's not supposed to be crisp. It's supposed to let your imagination go with what you're looking at. I've got my reflections down here in the water of the mountains in the background, or foothills, or whatever you want to call them. And but first I'm going to cover colors. And so this is kind of like what we're going to aim for. It might not turn out exactly the same. We might do our mountains a little different. So I have this plastic tray. It's about 8 inches by 12, and it's perfect for something like this instead of using a palette. You can use a palette, but with this I like to use for the acrylics because I got a lot more workspace. Because with acrylics you don't put as much out onto your palette as you would if you were using oil. Because like I said, oil is forgiving to be able to make it stretch. Now there's a product out there, and this is the Slow Dry Blending Gel Medium. This is what I mix in with my acrylic paint so that if I have a particular part of the painting that I do not want to dry fast and I want to be able to work with it a little bit, I will put this in with the color that I'm using for that part of the picture or that painting. So the Slow Dry Blending Gel Medium, this is a generic version. It's Artist Loft. I believe I got this at either Hobby Lobby, probably Hobby Lobby or Joann Fabrics, but I'm pretty sure it was Hobby Lobby that carries Artist Loft. The prices are a little bit more reasonable. So, and I have 2 tubes of this. So whenever I get something that I know I'm going to use a lot of, I get 2 of it. So I got 2 of these. And then the other color that you will use a lot of is your basic titanium white. So you'll also notice in acrylic paints that a lot of the colors are named the same as the oils. There's a titanium white oil. There's also an alizarin crimson oil. And I finally found an alizarin crimson acrylic. And the Liquitex makes a lot of colors. And this is really nice acrylic paint to use. And it comes in a big tube. So if you want to go crazy and do impasto with your acrylic, a big tube will do that. If you're wondering what impasto means, impasto is like when you go to touch the painting, you feel the ridges. It makes texture. So impasto is texture. So alizarin crimson is another one. Then there is your what's called cadmium yellow. I just call it bright yellow. There's other shades of yellow, but cad yellow is typically one of those colors you use. These are all the basic colors you need. You do not need 30,000 different colors because you mix these to get the shades that you want. So I've got cad yellow. I've got basically it's a permanent red. I have some old acrylics. They were a set of little tubes like this, and I use those up before I buy new ones. So I know if you start a collection of these, if you have the old acrylics and they're still good, just make sure that they aren't separating. When you open up your acrylic, make sure that no liquid comes out before the paint. The paint should come out all at one time. If the liquid comes out, then it's not really good for doing this type of painting, but it may be good for areas that you want to be kind of liquidy as far as movement goes in your brush strokes. So there's a regular red. Then I haven't found in the acrylics yet a phthalo blue or the other shade of blue that they always use. There's phthalo blue and can't remember the name of the blue. But this is a true blue. This is a primary blue. So this primary blue can be dulled down, brightened up, or whatever you want to do just by mixing the paint. I'm going to show you how to do that with the blue today. how you can get a, did you know that gray comes from blue? But it does, it comes from blue. And then this is the sap green. Now I finally found sap green because I wanted to have the same colors in acrylic that I do in the oils, because I do toy around with the Bob Ross method of painting, and he always used sap green and Van Dyke brown. I even found a Van Dyke brown in this, but I'm going to use up my burnt umber because this burnt umber is a very dark shade of brown, and again, you can make it more red, you can lighten it up, but it's a really deep brown. You see how dark that brown is? It's got a lot of blue in it, which the blue makes it the brown shade more blue, the darker the brown. So there's a little clue for you on that. And then the sap green is almost like a forest green in my my book. It's funny, whenever I see, then I go to buy these, if you can see the actual paint when you open it up, like if there's not a seal inside, and I don't remember if these had a seal inside or not, you can actually see the shade of the paint. That's why when you go to a hobby shop, you'll see paint smears all over the shelf because people open them up and try them out. Well, they're not supposed to do that, but sometimes that's the only way you know if you're going to want to buy it. They really should have swatches in the craft stores. And then sometimes I get lazy and I don't want to brighten up my green, so I buy a tube of bright green. Well, I got this, what is this, light, it's a light emerald green, so it's a really bright green. That's like I call it St. Patrick's Day green because it's really bright, nice bright green. So I'll use that for highlight sometimes. I may or may not use it for this little exercise, but I want to show you how to mix your paints to get what you are looking for, your sky. Okay, for those of you who are beginners, the first thing that you're going to paint is your background, and you come forward. And the things that are further away, if you've ever been out taking photographs or just sightseeing, if you're looking at mountains far away, they're very muted and they're not much color to them because of the distance. It's going through the atmosphere and all of that. So with this primary blue, it's a beautiful, beautiful blue. So excuse that. As you can see, it's a beautiful shade of blue. So with that, when you're mixing your colors, you want to do equal parts of, if you want to totally change the value of it. The value meaning the shade. So if I put a pea-sized spot of blue, okay, and then I want to lighten it. So I want it to be a lighter blue. So I'm going to get my white, and I'm going to put the same size dot right next to it. Pretty close. So now you see there's, I don't know if you can see the white, but it's in there. There it is. So you have one dot of each of the same. And you see how it's not dripping off of this? That's a good consistency. That's a good thickness of acrylic paint. If it was running down this, I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it unless I was going to try to do a wash like I would with my watercolors and use an acrylic for the wash instead. So the other thing I do is I have two different palette knives. This is the smaller of the two, and I like to use this with my acrylic. You can use a popsicle stick. You can use a bamboo skewer. You know, anything that you don't mind getting paint on it. So since I put those two amounts together, I'm just going to mix them together and see what I get with this shade of blue and this white. And I totally mix them. And you kind of flip-flop it back and forth, and you get this beautiful color, blue. It is the light version of the blue that came out of the tube. And when you totally mix it, that's when you get the full value. If you don't totally mix it, that's when you can use it for doing highlights or shadows on mountains in your painting. Now this is what I call Robin's Egg Sky Blue. So I did equal amounts of white and the blue, and I got this beautiful sky blue color. Okay, so with that said, now I could use this on my sky, which I will probably do real quick here because, like I said, this is acrylic. I did not put the drying medium in it because skies are usually pretty quick. And as far as brushes go, you can use any craft brush for acrylic, water-based. You're not going to ruin them. What I like to do is get these little 1-inch craft brushes, and this one's got some leftover paint stuck in it, but that's okay for me because when I do my sky, I don't want it to be perfectly, flat. The other thing is your paintings typically are divided into 3 planes or 3 sections. You have your distance section, your middle view, and then your up close, your first closest view. So if you keep that in mind as you build it, then you'll not have a tendency to have too much sky and not enough of the whatever you have in your foreground, whether it be water or grass. So take one of these little 1-inch brushes. Since I'm only doing this on, I think this is 8.5 by 11 or 12. This is cold pressed paper. There's a cold press paper and there's a hot press paper. The difference between the two is when you get the paper that you're going to, if you're doing it on canvas, cold press is the equivalent. Cold press watercolor paper is the equivalent to the stretch canvas that you would do acrylic on. Okay, so I'm doing it on the paper because it's easier to show you all, and I always use this as a teaching tool. Cold press paper, you want 140-pound paper. One side is going to be kind of bumpy, that's your painting surface. Unless you want a smoother surface, you turn it over. And on the back of the cold press is a smoother surface. Where hot press, it's smooth on both sides. So this one has, I call it the textured side or the bumpy side of the paper. And you load up the brush you're going to do with your, I'm going to take all of this blue off of here so that way I can clean this off and make a different shade of blue if I want to. And from 1/3 of the way up, you can mark it where 1/3 of the way up is. And then you just really want to just kind of crisscross it across there. And leave in the little white spots. Don't worry about white spots being there because you're going to need clouds, right? You might have big white clouds. You might have little white clouds. And I'm just finagling here. Okay, so then I'm going to add a little bit of, I have 2 jars of water. One's for clean water, one's for dirty water. So I'm going to loosen up this blue that I've got on my palette. And I'm going to go back to my paper and put that blue in there. And I figure wherever I've got a white spot, that's where a cloud goes. We're going to do mountains on these clouds. Okay, so now I've got this light blue, but I need clouds. Now for that, I could use the same brush, or I can use a different brush. Another favorite for doing clouds is a fan brush, because it's more pliable. These are old craft brushes, by the way. I just happened to see them downstairs in my workroom, and I thought, well, I'm going to take those up there. So I've got a fan brush. It's about a 1-inch fan brush, and you can see that the bristles are fairly soft. They're nylon bristles. I mean, you can use this for watercolor or acrylic. Not so much for oils. Oils, you want natural hair bristles. And so remember I told you about white, that you use a lot of it? Well, we're going to use a lot of white here. So I'm going to put this white next to that blue, about twice as much as what I did before. A little pile of white, because I don't want any of the paint to dry out. And there is a trick to keep your, if you have to like leave your painting for a minute and go do some things, there is a way to keep it from drying out, and I'm going to tell you that in a second. So you load up your fan brush, just like this, both sides, get it good and full of white, and then you want to just do swirls. Wherever you think, you want a cloud to be, just put some swirls in there, okay? And don't worry about it running out, the paint running out of it, because as it thins out, it actually gives you better clouds, believe it or not. I'm just doing little circles. Load it up with some white again. And I'm just doing little circles. Just little circles. It's got lots of clouds in this blue sky. And they kind of run together. We get a lot of big poofy clouds around here. Or, you know, sometimes it's very little blue in the sky. All you see is clouds. But you can see the blue underneath the white, just like you would in a regular sky. Okay. Now that blue is too dark for my taste, so I'm going to add a little bit of water. I don't care if I'm using the dirty water because the dirty water had blue in it. I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to soften up that blue just a little. Same little circles. Okay? Exact same circles over this white. That way you can put, as you circle in there, you can put darker spots in your white clouds. Because really the skies around here aren't this dark blue, but it's a base point. You start with that and you build on it. Just like this. Okay, so now I got some fluffy looking clouds and blue, and I'm going to stick a little bit of blue down here, but this is where the mountains go, or where I'm going to put them. And some of you probably are, you know, all itching to do. I'm just taking the brush as it's out of paint. I'm just going to pull, I just kind of like softly touch the paper and pull it across while it's still kind of wet. And then that sky is done. So I have one little really bright white cloud over here. I'm going to outline it just a little. Make it stand out like this. Like the sun is hitting it a little bit more than the others. And like up here, same thing. Give them some character. Add some highlights. This is how you add highlights. You add more white to your brush. And you put it in there. And now this really starting to look like clouds. You know, because some of them are very bright, others are muted, and smooth out that kind of rough spot looking. And now you've got bright highlights in the clouds. You've got dulled spots in there. And now we got kind of like a cloudy ridge look here. So that was that easy. A little fan brush, loaded it up, used the paint straight from your palette or tray, and then when you want to lighten up or mute down the blue because it was so dark, just add some white to it and a little bit of water, and it will smooth it right out for you. And that's why you want to use 140-pound paper. Ideally, this watercolor paper would be taped to a piece of wood, and that's how you get the paper to not shrink up on you. You'll have a little outline, which is fine because once you frame it, it's not going to be there. You're not being able to see it. So let me get a paper towel. Another thing is roll of paper towels. That's a definite tool that you need to have to use. So let's do this. Now, for those of you who are always saying like, I don't know how to do mountains. How do you do mountains? Well, mountains you can do with a palette knife or you can do with a brush. I'm going to show you how to do with a brush instead of the palette knife. For those of you who are beginners and not real comfortable with using a palette knife because it's like a certain angle and you cut it a certain way, yeah, we won't use this today. What we're going to do is we're going to use a 3/4 inch brush, squared off tip, to make our mountains. And when your mountains are in the distance, if it's far enough away, they're going to have these same colors. So you don't need to use any more color on your palette. You use the same blue and the white. And so I'm going to take I've added some water to the blue because now it's kind of runny, see? And I'm going to take and pull some of that white through it. Okay? And I'm going to turn it around the other way and pull it through there. So now it's kind of marbled. I don't know if you can see blue and white. Blue on one side, white on the other, and on the opposite side. So you decide how with your shape. Well, typically you want to it's upside down V. And so you take your brush this way and you pull it down and this way. And you're going to put it up and pull this way. Okay? So this is really, really light. That's okay. You're just outlining them so you've got your little ridge of mountains. You know, they're not real distinct and they're not supposed to be when they're far away. And you're just going to put peaks, different peaks on here. A little more blue and white. Pull that down. Okay. And go like this. And pull it across. Now, you know how mountains have ridges and whatnot. And I'm just pulling the rest of it down below to get the paint out of my brush. I'm just going to pull it down below. Because everything you're pulling out of it down here is going to end up getting covered up anyway. Okay? Now, you don't really see any shapes. You don't really see, you can kind of sort of see, yeah, there's mountains on there. So the next thing you want to do is clean out that big, it's about 3/4 inch square tip brush. Clean it off. Okay. And I'm going to get a smaller brush. Same shape, but just a smaller version of it. And I'm going to put in the highlights first. Some people put in the shadows first. I put the highlights in first, and then the shadows meet the highlighting. So the next brush that I have is very similar to the one I was just using, except it has a rounded tip on it. It's really easy to maneuver on here. And I want to put my highlights in, but before I do that, I'm going to put a little bit more of this deep blue on my tray right next to there, and take the white and the blue, a lot of white though, a lot of the white, a little bit of the blue, a lot of the white, and I'm going to put it on one side of the mountain. First peak. Okay. I'm going to do the next one same way on the same side, because our light source, you want to make sure that if your light source is on this side, that this is where the highlights are. If your light source is on that side, then it's going to be on this end. But we're going to have the light coming from the right. And put that in there. And just kind of, it's literally, you're just following the line of the shape of the mountain. And remember, the smaller ones are going to be, that are farther away, they're going to be behind the bigger ones. So they kind of like overlap. Okay, and there's that. Okay, so I've got my highlighting in there. Now I'm going to put in my shadow. So for the shadows, I take that dark blue, put some of the white in there, but I still want to keep in that blue family. And then go behind where that white is and follow the shape of the mountain. Okay? Follow the shape of it. This one goes this way, because there's a little one back there. Can't really see the peak yet, but we're going to fix that. And pull the paint through, just pull it all out. Okay. So this big guy in the center. Always one that's really big, right? It's going to stick out more. And there's going to be let's put another one underneath it that kind of like sticks out. And same way here. Let's have this guy sticking out from behind. And I think this one's going to cross over. There's going to be a so we're going to do, so now we've got a couple different ones here, and we're just following how it goes. And this little guy back here, comes up, and this little fella right here comes up, and as you can see, now you can kind of see that there are mountains back here. Okay, now we're going to take some of that, well, we're going to water it down. I'm going to take some water out of there, and we're going to water it down just so that the shadow isn't so stark, and it gives it more shape. And you pull it down, let it out. Now this does not give the kind of marbling effect that it would if it was oil, but you can see where these different ridges meet just by tapping it. When it's too dry, you take a little water and you go in there and you play with it like this, because you want to have the dark value over top of the light. Now as you add more water to it, to this light blue and more white, you get more of a gray color, and that's ideal because you want that snowy part not to be so snowy that it's pure white, because they're not. Okay, so we're gonna tone that down just a little, but it's still going to be a shadow, just not as predominant. This one's got a little ridge here, and then this guy, same thing. Bring that shadow color down. Okay, and just go underneath here and just kind of get that paint out of that brush. Okay, just get the paint out of the brush. Okay, now to make it really bright white, so it kind of like pops, you can see it. Now you see it's kind of gray, straight white, nothing else, just straight white. Load both sides of your brush up, both sides, and go and highlight it. You just kind of dabble where you want it, where you want that highlight to be. Just like that. And do that on the big one. He's going to have a nice white peak on top. And of course it shadows down as it goes. And you do that to this little guy back here. And go to the last one here. And just give it nice stark white that stands out against the others. And if you come down, if you want to show a little glacier spot, just use up your paint. Just use it up and have it come down. Just let it come down or over top of the other peaks. Okay. And this one, you can't really see them too good. So I'm going to dullen out that cloud right there. I'm going to make that cloud a little gray by using the blue and the white, and make a little gray cloud back there with blue and white, mostly white, a little bit of blue, and that's going to give me a gray. See how it's turning gray? Isn't that amazing? It's that blue plus white, and it comes out gray. And that's how you get those shadows in the clouds, like gray shadow. You just take a little bit of water, a little tiny bit of the blue, and a little tiny bit of the white, and you get a lovely gray. And when you get that gray, then your mountain range starts to stick out better. Just like here. You can put gray bottom clouds. You can put, you know how before it rains they get gray on the bottom? You can gray them out. Now if I want to give more definition to the separation of these, I'm going to take some of that gray and just make it a little bit deeper color and follow it down. Put it on the back side here. A little more blue. Just add it. Just add that blue and make it so it's not solid. Okay? Give some shadows, this blue shadows in here. Okay, because this guy, this big guy in the middle, he's a show off. You gotta have that big dark spot. There it goes. You can go to this little guy behind. A little bit of water there. It's a little dark. I'm gonna lighten him up. There we go. He was just a little too dark. This one's got to be dark. You gotta chop it in there. Okay. Now we need to really make that highlight pop. Show it off just a little bit. Have it fade into the shadows. And put a little bit of that gray on the back side of these guys. So these are going to be off in the distance. Just like that. Go up. So if you want to really pop out and you want to see it, just come up further with your peaks. Just have them come way up high, like I did with that one. Just like this one. Here we have him come right up into that blue, and then you can really see. And you can pull some of that white across into the shadow, and that really gives it a nice shape. Like this one here, just pull it across. Just like that. And do this with the last one, because we want these to show on top of that gray, so we need a little more white, and just pull that over. So this is how you mix blue with white and get your gray values, and put some highlighting in there. I mean, you can do all kinds of highlighting. Put in a glacier right through here, down at the foot of the another one here. Now those glaciers kind of peek out. And come down this way. Now if you want to make like a mist, just take that, don't even finish cleaning the brush out with that blue and white. Take it and make, until the brush is dry, you want to just swirl it around while it's still kind of moist. A little bit of water, not too much, just a dot. Get some of that water out. And then go to the base of it and make yourself some mist. Okay? And then you make mist at the bottom of your mouth. Just circle, 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 circle with a round tip brush, which is what this is, a round tip brush. Okay? And then you can fluff it up, pull it up to help dry that brush out. It also makes a nice smoky base. So now you can see. Those are some nice, real, I mean, yeah, they're pointed, but they're different heights and whatnot, and you can make them whatever size and shape you want. Well, this is step 1. Step 2, we'll do reflections and use some other colors.